All right, welcome everyone. I'm excited to have Robert Chatwani with me. Robert is the CMO of Atlassian. And for anyone that has watched any of these over the last couple of years, you've seen me have much longer hair than I have now. So I'm definitely very jealous of Robert's do. Makes me regret my decision a few months ago to cut it. So excited to have Robert with me, and would love for you to give a minute to talk about yourself and what you're up to now.
Well, fantastic. Well, Joe, let me first say thank you. It's great to be here. I don't do this often, but I enjoy sort of stepping back, zooming out, and what can I ask for better than this, which is just to spend some time with a colleague in the industry. I'm Robert Chatwani. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Atlassian. We are a software company focused on collaboration. But our mission is really to unleash the potential of every team. And so we really thrive at the intersection of teamwork, technology, collaboration, and not just the technology there, but the practices and principles that define high-performing teamwork. That's where we love to help customers. And a lot of our products, perhaps you or others have become familiar with over time, products like Jira, Jira software, Trello, Confluence, often the products that really underpin collaboration across teams. I've been at Atlassian this month. It'll be 4 years. So it's incredible how fast time flies. It's been a lot of fun, and the company's seen a lot of growth, but in many ways, we're just getting started. And then before Atlassian, have a lot of experience at startups, larger companies, the longest of which was at eBay, where I was for 12 years. So quite a leap to come from a consumer enterprise to what I would call more a classic software company. But it's incredible with how things are changing these days with consumerization of the enterprise, that those lines are really starting to blur.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm such a fan of Atlassian's products, Jira, Confluence, Trello. We use all of them here at Cloud App, and I use them at Adobe as well. And so, yeah, I'm excited to kind of chat through some things with you. Collaboration is such a key of really connecting internally and making sure that you're connecting with your customers externally. What is the DNA of a good customer experience? What do you think are some key elements of that?
Well, it's a big question, and so maybe I'll take a piece of it. But as I'm a marketer, but as marketers, as engineers, as product managers, as CEOs, I think this is really something that all of us share, which is what can we do, what's within our control and what's within our influence to help deliver a better experience for customers. I think in particular, it's worth highlighting that this is a critical time for a question like that. If you look at the past year, really the shock to the system with the global pandemic has changed a lot, both in terms of expectations that customers have and also how we work within organizations. Whether you're a startup or a large company, how do you actually choreograph the resources you need to deliver a great experience? And so I feel like in many ways, I'll give you my view on what defines a great experience, but I think almost anyone is qualified to really answer this. A few highlights, a few principles of how we think about it at Atlassian and how I think about it. The first is what I call the experience gap. As a customer, what do I expect versus what do I actually experience? If I have extremely high expectations for what an experience will deliver, but that's not what I actually experience, that gap is what I believe leads to a bad experience. Similarly, if I have very low expectations of an experience, and I can give you some examples of this, but I walk out of a retail experience or dealing with a vendor or frankly any interaction, and it's a fantastic experience, I'll be very satisfied. So I think as designers, engineers, product managers, marketers, really thinking about the gap in shrinking that gap and over delivering even on what a customer might expect. The second thing I'll mention is high consistency. So with every interaction with a brand or with a company, do I feel that I get a predictable and consistent experience? and hopefully consistently positive experience. I think that's also very defining. And then lastly, many of us experience hurdles or friction. I have a lot of good examples of this, but when we can create low friction experiences, meaning the amount of energy that I as a customer put into something relative to the value that I get out, I think that's a really important sort of design principle as well.
I love that. I think those are all three really great things you dove into. The low friction, especially. It's so hard to create a consistently good brand experience as well across all the channels that I'm sure you guys are involved in. How can you really stand out, or how can a company stand out by kind of providing a good experience, being consistent, closing that gap, and having the low friction opportunities?
Well, before I jump to that, can I actually give you an example?
Yeah, please.
So I'll give you, this is going to be a really silly example. But like many of us, we're all at home with our families, with our pets. My wife and I, we have 3 kids. One of the things that we've started to do much more of in the past year, we live in California, Northern California, is take road trips, safe road trips with the kids, get out of the house. We were on a road trip to Mount Shasta, which is about 4 or 5 hours from where we live.
Sure.
First time we had visited there, my daughter hurt herself on a sledding on a sledding hill. We're on the way home. Turns out we were out of Band-Aids. We were out of first aid stuff in the car. We had a few things that we had picked up there. And we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Pull over, try to find a spot, a convenience store, a drugstore, or something. And the only thing that we could find was a dollar store. Now, I don't have experience going to too many dollar stores, but when I have, let's just say, extraordinarily low expectations. I have to tell you, probably one of the most interesting and compelling retail experiences I've had in months. From the minute I walked into the door, the person who greeted me guided me to the first aid aisle, helped me and stood with me to make sure I found exactly what I was looking for, with my daughter with me, unlocking the little cabinet because we bought something that was sort of behind lock and key, walking me to the register, and then asking me if there's anything else I needed. It's sort of a silly, but I think a really good example of having extremely low expectations, but walking out with what was a great experience. And, I think across all of the interactions as consumers, we can probably classify every experience we have into one of these 2 categories. Was it great, or did it, was it below expectations? And I think as marketers, as leaders, as designers, we need to think about putting ourselves in the customer's shoes around how to stand out. And it's sort of exactly, to your next question, I think it starts with brand promise, right? What is your purpose? What's your company and organization's reason for being? Companies like Nike and Starbucks, BMW, right? When I say these brands, to the extent that we've had interactions with them, I imagine most consumers in some form have with at least one of those brands, we can probably, with pretty reasonable precision, state their purpose or mission. And when you have that galvanizing North Star, I feel, for an organization or a company, it really serves as the starting point for then, delivering a great experience. And then, the way I think about it is it then goes to culture, right? Do you attract and cultivate employees who want to be part of a culture where you have empathy for your customer? Do you care, right? So not only do you need the mission and purpose, but do we have the DNA to really deliver against that purpose and mission when it comes to a great customer experience? And then ultimately, I think teams really need to feel empowered. Can someone call BS if something that's being shipped is subpar, right? Are there examples of that get talked about? Hey, 6 months ago, our company was doing X, Y, Z, but so-and-so in this particular team called BS on it and said it wasn't good enough. And the more of those stories you have, I feel that the more you can reinforce what great should look like. And then the feedback loops are important. And I often think that's where a lot of teams often start, which is like, do we have NPS ratings? Do we have CSAT and customer satisfaction ratings. All that is important, but I believe that those are just the table stakes capabilities. It's those other things I mentioned I think are critical.
Yeah, and your story is almost like a nice little analogy filler to like your customers that are coming in on the tech side are they need help with something. If they find you from a Google search, they're trying to save time, or they're trying to save an issue of time management or collaboration with lots of different people. And so that's kind of your first point, is your messaging from that landing page or whatever that they first land on. And then all the way through, the crisis of reaching out to customer support, and their product roadmap is down and they need it for a board meeting, and it's on their Trello board, or it's on, some Atlassian product, and they're trying to figure out how to get access to it from support. It goes all the way from that first step to support kind of solving their problem. It's got to have that, unified connection, unified message, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing to is a lot of what gets discussed these days, which is the journey, right? As a customer, if I'm initiating a particular interaction with a company, what does that end-to-end journey look like for different types of customers, potentially new customers, existing customers of different across different segments and in cohorts. The ability to zoom out and take a systems view at that becomes increasingly complex, particularly in large organizations where goals and often objectives tend to get disconnected. It's those individuals, regardless of where you sit in your organization, I feel that it's not just your responsibility, it's your obligation to help the customer think about bringing the best of your company forward, right? I often talk about, great experiences should not be relegated to just the design team or just the marketing team or just the sales team or just the engineering team. It's how all of that works together, and how all of that not just works together, but works together to deliver the right experience and outcome for a particular customer's need.
Exactly. Yeah. And, one thing we try and do here at Cloud App is we obviously use the product quite a bit, and we close every ticket with a support ticket with a video or screenshot if it's relevant. We send out videos instead of long emails for when we're prospecting on our sales side. And that's 10x our conversion rates with the sales side. And we've had like 4 or 5 straight weeks of 100 scores on our customer support side.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah, and NPS is more than doubled over the last 2 years. So what are some ways, visuals and video can help, especially now in a remote world, to really connect with customers and make that even stronger?
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I'm a marketer, and I can tell you that the use of media beyond just text is extraordinarily powerful in so many ways, the least of which is bringing your message to life. My data point here, unsighted and dated, a data point that I remember from my consumer marketing days at eBay, but one we tuned into quite a bit, is customers recall over 2/3 of what they recall is from what they see, and less than 10% of what they recall is from what they hear. Now, I think that's a really important stat, because it reinforces oftentimes we lean on written communication or verbal communication, but to the extent that those messages can be brought to life through visuals, I think that that's extraordinarily powerful, because the brain also processes imagery much, much faster than we process text or we process the spoken word. And so, what does that actually mean? Again, from a marketing perspective, I'll give you an example, which is at Atlassian, we used to have blogs that covered almost every dimension of what we do as a company. A couple of years ago, we relaunched how we think about content. And we have a blog platform and a vehicle called Work Life by Atlassian. And if anyone visits WorkLife, you'll notice that the content is extraordinarily visual. Every blog post is accompanied with a graphic and an image, and we use images to tell stories. What we found is both, traffic numbers are way up, but the engagement and interaction with that content is also extraordinarily relative to what it was in the past. And so, you're in the business of video. We're recording video right now. I think any ways in which we could use multiple forms of media to convey our message, knowing that individuals interpret and digest data and information in different ways, using a multitude of means, visual, auditory, otherwise, I believe is just a really powerful mechanism to help communicate, no matter what business you're in.
Yeah, and you guys put out this really great. You mentioned the WorkLife blog, which I think is really great. I love kind of the nice launch, with the move to home and kind of like work is all around you now. And you also did this really great survey in the fall of last year, talking about 5,000 knowledge workers and kind of the changes in remote work.
Yeah.
Everyone is managing more. There's so much to consume here. What was kind of like your favorite stat from that?
Well, we're all living in this new reality as knowledge workers, whether it's working from home, looking at the disappearing lines between our work life and our home life, that integration, right? That is increasingly happening increasingly, I should say. These are all trends that largely are here to stay. They will adapt and reshape and reform. But that survey that you mentioned, that research project we did, 5,000 individuals, knowledge workers across 5 different countries. The first and foremost takeaway is everyone is working more. And so the fatigue that we may be feeling, the stress that may come along with that, the sheer volume of work as we've removed a lot of the friction of commuting and a lot of the friction of what I call those interaction costs, is having a real toll. However, on the other side of this is really a regeneration and rethink of what it means for us to deliver results, innovation, the way teams are coming together across functions, how we define the ways of working through the use of technology. These are all inputs into a whole new generation of how teams and companies are going to innovate and deliver for the future. I think there's so many downsides to clearly a global pandemic like what we're suffering. But with every human experience, there's also this flip side, which is the creativity and the opportunities to learn. And so through that data, what we revealed is there's unbelievable amounts of innovation that's taking place. Video conferencing and events, telemedicine, delivery services, wellness apps. And I believe, when we look at this 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now, we will see this as almost a renaissance moment in the development and creation of new ideas. And so a lot of the research that we've done is showing us, we get the benefit of looking at 200,000 customers and how their teams work together. And we are seeing an unprecedented amount of innovation that's coming from new ways of working.
Yeah, I think it's such a great, you guys came together and put together this content and provided such a great, experience to your customers in a way that provides them with content and kind of clarity on what the future might bring and just being a leader in the future of work. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that experience earlier. Is there another recent experience where you may have become a more loyal customer because something a company who overperformed either in the tech space, retail, where you were the customer?
Yeah, I have so many because I do. My brain tunes into this, right? As a marketer, I think about who designed what I'm experiencing. I'll share an example of one company, but 2 examples. And the reason I use two examples is because they're completely disconnected. But as a customer, I experienced a very positive sentiment as a result of it. And it's one that I think everyone can connect to, many can connect to, which is Apple. Millions of customers around the world. But I'll give you two very quick examples of my Apple experience. The first one actually goes back several years. Now I forget which iPhone edition it was, probably the iPhone 8. I have a really good friend of mine who always wants to be the first to get the device. We went to Palo Alto store in Palo Alto, the retail store, and got in line at 4 a.m. And
Nice.
First time I've ever done this, right? That's not, I tend not to be the first adopter, but he is, and he wanted me to join. We were in line at 4 a.m. The line wrapped all around the block off of University Avenue, if anyone's been to that Apple store. And it was dark. It was cold. I don't know, September, October, whenever it was. And we were in line for about half an hour. Now remember, the store didn't open until 8 a.m. So we had 4 hours of waiting at a minimum. And we saw this bus pull up. And out of the bus jumps out about 15 or 20 Apple employees wearing blue shirts. And Apple had sent a bus, I don't know where, maybe to Cupertino, asked for employee volunteers to come and simply keep folks in line comfortable. And they walked out with a coffee cart, bottles of water, high-fiving everybody in line, just to sort of keep them entertained and engaged in the cold until the store opened. And I just thought that was a small but such a meaningful example of creating a good experience out of effectively what is 4 hours of waiting in line in the cold. And the energy, the positive sort of vibes that were coming from that team were just incredible. And it also created a sense of anticipation and what's about to come. So, that's one experience where I would say unexpected, but also very positive, not functionally or logically. It's great to have a cup of warm coffee, but emotionally, it reinforced sort of what the company stood for. Fast forward 2 or 3 years later, I was on a flight from San Francisco to Sydney, and my iPhone slipped between the plane's seat.
Oh,
so the mechanisms, right? Adjust the seat. I had just woken up. I hadn't realized that. I adjusted my seat, and I heard a crack.
Oh no!
There it goes. My iPhone was shattered.
Yeah.
Landed in Sydney. There was an Apple store right by our office. During lunch, went over there with a shattered phone. Had again 0 expectations, and the Genius Bar experience was fantastic. Within about 15 minutes, the Apple employee was able to get me a new phone. And I could tell that there were about 10 or 15 different types of interactions that had to happen. But I was on the other side of the world. They had checked my account. They checked my Apple Care warranty. They checked the model that I had. As a customer, all of that complexity of the work processes, the rules was hidden from me, right?
Yeah.
I just walked out of there with a new phone. And at the end of the day, it worked exactly as I needed it to. And the company effectively removed all of that friction for me as a customer. Now, again, I had low expectations. Turns out I was fortunate it was under warranty. But the process was so delightful. And I'm talking to you about it, right? Now, those are two very different experiences from the same company, 2 different parts of the world. And what I would argue is that really comes down to culture and purpose and mission. It starts there, and then it gets down to the actual, okay, what are the mechanisms that need to be put into place to deliver a great experience?
Yeah, that's such a good point, to look under the hood and realizing that it's so operational. Like the money that had to be invested to, like you said, make all those connection points in infrastructure, to get the employees to get on the bus in that first experience, and then the second experience, having all those different things talk to each other on the different side of the world is definitely something companies may not want to invest in, but it's so important to do, to really form that full experience. Yeah,
and it requires an ability to look at the opportunity from a customer's point of view and work the way in. And I believe any of us could do this. We could go through any experience that our company offers and do a write-up of an audit, right? I want to purchase a new item. I want to contact customer support. Just do the audit, identify the experience gaps, and then the hard part is now how do you close those gaps? And that's where the challenge comes in. But companies like Apple, at least in my experience, in these two examples, did it extraordinarily well.
Awesome. Robert, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. You've had some great stories, great knowledge bombs. I'm excited to kind of put together some quotes from this. As your kind of parting words, your crystal ball, what do you see the future of experience business being?
You love big questions, don't you, Joe? Look, I think the companies that will adapt to how customer needs are changing, and the companies that do that the best will be the ones that really thrive. Now's the moment to really do that. I was recently in a conversation with somebody who's on the board of Best Buy, and she was explaining to me, I didn't know this story, that Best Buy pivoted their entire retail model right when COVID was beginning in the US in late February, but early March. 51,000 employees shifted within 48 hours to accelerate their curbside delivery program. And that has resulted in incredible growth for that company since.
Wow.
So, my parting thoughts would be one, systems thinking, really look at the entire journey from a customer's point of view and how you design that to be, the best possible experience. Agility, the organizational agility you need to really seamlessly connect teams, regardless of what function you sit in. I think that Best Buy example is a really good one, just to showcase the need for speed and agility. And then lastly, you mentioned this earlier, measurement, have the basic data insights, the instrumentation in place so you get those feedback loops.
Awesome. Those are all really great. Robert, thank you again for your time. And I hope that you have a good rest of the day and rest of the week. And we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Robert.